The United States Supreme Court can't count to 5. They can only count to 4. And if they can only count to 4, they can't make bad law concerning gun rights, as consistent with the Second Amendment, but with a huge asterisk there. And similarly, they are allowing a ban in Rhode Island and therefore in other states on high-capacity magazines. We got 2 cases on today's list for the Supreme Court in which the Supreme Court has allowed a ban on AR-15 and other long assault rifles in states like Maryland and across the country.
Did the Supreme Court just pull a surprise U-turn on gun rights? After their bombshell ruling in the Brune case where they struck down New York's strict concealed carry law, you'd think they were firmly in the gun rights camp, but now, they've just upheld AR-15 bans in Maryland and Rhode Island. Wait, what? Is the same court that expanded gun freedoms now letting states restrict them again? Stick around, we're diving into this legal roller coaster, and Justice Kavanaugh just dropped a cryptic breadcrumb that suggests this story isn't over. Could this trigger even more legal chaos in America's gun debate? Before we go further, quick favor. If you like content that untangles legal messes without the legalese, hit that like button and subscribe. Over 98% of you watch without subscribing. It costs nothing, helps us a lot, and keeps you in the loop. All right, back to the mayhem.
Both of those things for now do not appear, the way those cases have been developed, to violate not only the Second Amendment on the language of the Second Amendment. There has to be a historical analog, a historical tradition of banning these types of weapons going back to the old-timey times. Through a decision by Justice Alito back in 2022, we call the Brune decision, which says in order to have these bans survive, constitutional analysis.
The Supreme Court's ruling in New York State Rifle and Pistol Association v. Brune was supposed to be a watershed moment. Gun rights groups called it a historic win finally. The Second Amendment had teeth. AR-15 bans. Many believed they were next on the chopping block. But fast forward to now, and Brune's ripple seems to have hit a brick wall. When Maryland and Rhode Island's AR-15 bans reached the court, SCOTUS declined to intervene. No dramatic takedown, no sweeping expansion of gun rights, just silence effectively letting the bans stand. So, what gives? This is the same court many hailed as a champion of the Second Amendment. 1 minute, they're rewriting gun laws. The next, they're letting states keep some of the very restrictions Brune appeared to challenge. It's like SCOTUS gave gun rights supporters a green light, then immediately
in these cases. So don't be surprised if I come back with a hot take and I tell you a year from now that they are not going to allow an AR-15 ban, and they're going to find that it's inconsistent with the Second Amendment. And we have in the dissents and in the statements by Kavanaugh, by Thomas, in the Maryland case, we know what they're going to do in the next year or two. This has been a long term for everybody. It started in the first Monday of October and goes until they issue their last decision at the end of this month.
Let's talk fallout. In Maryland, gun rights advocates had been waiting years to challenge the state's AR-15 ban, especially after Brune gave them momentum. But when the court refused to take up the case, it wasn't just a pause, it felt like a punch. In Rhode Island, the same story. Groups braced for a ruling that might gut their ban. Instead, a shrug from SCOTUS. No ruling, no explanation, just ... status quo ... and then enter Justice Kavanaugh with a classic Supreme Court move, the vague comment. He hinted that the AR-15 issue might return to the court. Translation: we might deal with this later. That's not clarity, that's a legal riddle. The court could have given us a roadmap. Instead, it tossed the country a breadcrumb trail and walked away. For advocates on both sides, it's like winning a raffle and not knowing the prize.
Maryland's assault weapon ban went up to the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals. It bans AR-15s. It was passed originally in the wake of the Sandy Hook disaster, elementary school massacre, primarily focused on the AR-15. The problem with the AR-15 in America is that it's proliferated. It is like the #1 long arm that people have in their homes. They are very similar to military-grade weaponry like the M16, and if they are military-grade weaponry or something like it, then they shouldn't be allowed to, a citizen should not be allowed to bear them. They're not bearable.
So what's going on here? One theory floating around is that the court's decision, or lack of one, could be about strategy. Maybe SCOTUS is trying to play the long game, pacing itself to avoid a massive national relitigation of gun laws all at once. Some say it could also reflect divisions within the court itself. Not every justice is as trigger-happy on overturning laws as their prior votes. might suggest others argue this could be an intentional signal to state legislators telling them to go ahead and test the limits until SCOTUS is ready to step back in. Look at Kavanaugh's comment again. If he's saying the issue isn't over, does that imply SCOTUS is fine with a patchwork of laws for now? Or is it hinting that the court isn't done rewriting gun rights entirely, regardless of SCOTUS' intentions? One thing's clear. The aftermath of this decision doesn't feel clean-cut. Instead of clarity, we've got an even blurrier picture of how gun rights will evolve. On one side, you have gun rights supporters fuming, arguing that the court is backtracking when it should have doubled down after Bruhan. On the other, gun control advocates, cautiously optimistic that this move might give states breathing room to enact tougher restrictions. But even they aren't popping champagne. The uncertainty is equally frustrating to them. If anything, both camps are left waiting, wondering if they're gearing up for the next courtroom showdown, or if SCOTUS will continue its streak of mixed messages. So here we are, stuck in no man's legal land. This ruling hasn't been framed as a definitive stance, but more like a vague shrug that carries major consequences. States are looking over their shoulders, activists are revving up for battle, and all eyes are still locked on the court that just flipped the script. Could this decision signal a significant shift in SCOTUS' approach to the Second Amendment, or is it just a weird blip on their judicial radar? Well, if you thought this ruling was chaotic, wait until you see the ripple effects it's unleashing in state legislators and courtrooms. Things are only getting messier from here. The Supreme Court isn't just making waves, it's creating a whole storm of legal chaos with this latest ruling by upholding AR-15 bans in Maryland and Rhode Island. While seemingly championing gun rights in the Bruin case, SCOTUS has thrown the law into a tailspin.
Allowed them to proliferate doesn't mean they're consistent with the Second Amendment. And those two federal courts have said, nah, those are military grade, and those are outside the protections of the Second Amendment. These two rulings, at least for now, indicate that Roberts, Chief Justice Roberts, and Amy Coney Barrett have slid over to, as we have said, they are the center-right. Came up from Maryland. What came up from Rhode Island is currently the law of the land. States can have on their books bans on large capacity magazines and bans on AR-15. But Kavanaugh pointed out, here's the big asterisk, and they help make the law because if they join with the three on the moderate wing, the Democratic appointed justices, they'll form a voting block of 5, and things will go their way.
What's legal today might be illegal tomorrow, and the biggest question on everyone's mind is what's the next turn on this legal roller coaster right now? No one knows if they're heading up the tracks, racing down, or about to derail entirely. Let's start with the basics. SCOTUS' ruling has left laws on thigh tangled in a weird legal limbo. Imagine being a gun owner in Maryland. You've been told for years that your state's AR-15 ban might not hold up, especially after the Bruhan decision. If anything, you were probably gearing up to celebrate the ban getting wiped out entirely. Instead, the Supreme Court stepped back with what looks like a nod of approval to the ban. Meanwhile, in other states without AR-15 bans, people are breathing easier, happy that this decision didn't come for their guns yet. The inconsistency is the real kicker. Depending on where you live, this ruling either feels like a win or a threat. It's all very Supreme Court, the Choose Your Own Adventure edition. That's the scary part. This isn't just about AR-15 or even guns in general. It's about the way the Supreme Court seems to be playing what some are calling legal chess instead of straightforward rulings. They're leaving breadcrumbs, cryptic comments from justices, half decisions, and unclear paths forward. The ambiguity isn't calming tensions, it's fueling them by tossing issues like this back to the states and lower courts. SCOTUS is forcing everyone to fight the same battle over and over again across different jurisdictions. It's not just exhausting, it's unsustainable, and yet here we are. The legal roller coaster shows no signs of slowing down, and SCOTUS is in the driver's seat. Will this ruling give more states the courage to push forward with bans, or have they just opened the door for an even bigger Second Amendment showdown down the line? One thing's for sure, this era of legal unpredictability isn't going anywhere, so fasten your metaphorical seatbelts. Oh wait, that might be illegal. Tomorrow to the future of gun rights in America has never been murkier, and this latest Supreme Court ruling has done little to clear up the fog. In fact, Justice Kavanaugh himself hinted that the AR-15 issue could land back on the court's docket sooner rather than later. Think of it like getting a rain check from a Supreme Court justice. Not exactly the clarity anyone was hoping for. His comments have only added more fuel to the debate, raising questions about whether the court will stick to its previous Bruin logic or pivot even further away from it. Either way, it looks like this isn't the last we'll hear about AR-15s in the courtroom. What's got everyone's attention now is how this ruling might embolden states to test the limits of gun control. Maryland and Rhode Island just got a green light, at least temporarily. to hold on to their AR-15 bans. Some states, especially those already leaning towards stricter gun regulations, are watching closely to see if they can push similar measures through without getting slapped down by SCOTUS. California is probably drafting something as we speak. Meanwhile, other states might take a more cautious approach, wary that the court's next ruling could go in the opposite direction. It's like everyone's playing legal Jenga, waiting to see how much they can stack before the whole thing collapses. Part of this instability comes down to who's making the decisions. Every time a president appoints a new justice, the ideological balance of the court shifts slightly, changing how landmark cases might get decided in the future. The court's approach to AR-15s might look different 5 years from now, depending on who's sitting in those 9 seats for gun rights supporters. This makes the judicial appointment process feel just as critical as any court ruling. The same goes for gun control advocates. Both sides know that the court's ideological makeup ultimately decides which way the legal pendulum swings, and right now the pendulum isn't just swinging, it's practically doing backflips. That unpredictability has some people asking whether the confusion around AR-15 laws could spill into other areas of American law. After all, if the Supreme Court is willing to create chaos around the Second Amendment, what's stopping them from doing the same with other constitutional questions? The balance of power between states and the federal government, voting rights, presidential authority, any of these could be thrown into the same kind of legal limbo we're seeing with gun rights. It's a tension that spreads far beyond courtrooms, bleeding into politics, state legislatures, and public trust. Here's another thing to think about. The deeper goal might not even be about AR at all. Some argue that SCOTUS rulings in cases like this are about crafting a slow, deliberate redefinition of constitutional interpretation. They're not flipping switches, they're moving chess pieces by issuing rulings that seem vague or contradictory. The court forces both sides to keep fighting their battles on shaky ground. That might sound strategic, but it leaves millions of Americans trying to navigate laws that feel more like quicksand. Gun owners in particular are left wondering if the AR-15 they legally bought 2 years ago might turn illegal this time next year, depending on what SCOTUS decides to do next. Justice Kavanaugh's hint about revisiting the AR-15 issue captures the essence of this uncertainty. It's like a teaser trailer for a sequel nobody asked for, but everyone now has to prepare for. Will the court double down on the precedent set by Bruhan, reaffirming a broad Second Amendment right to own firearms? Or will they continue hedging, leaving the states to fight it out in courtrooms across the country? Nobody knows, and that's exactly what makes this such a volatile time for gun rights in America. So where does all of this leave us right now? Gun rights in America are less like a straight road and more like a legal chessboard. Every state, every activist group, and every federal judge is playing their next move, trying to guess what SCOTUS will do next, and the truth is, nobody, not even the justices themselves, seems entirely sure. What's clear, though, is that this unpredictability is rippling outward, shaping not just the laws that govern guns, but the very framework of American law itself. As the dust settles on this ruling, one thing is certain: the Supreme Court has made the debate messier, louder, and a whole lot harder to predict. The Supreme Court's unpredictability isn't just about guns, it's changing how laws are even understood in this country. One minute they tighten the reins on restrictive gun laws, the next, they're upholding an AR bans. It's as stable as Jell-O on a washing machine. If Justice Kavanaugh's hint about revisiting the AR-15 issue tells us anything, it's that the debates are far from over. That's why staying informed is crucial. Whether you're prune rights or for stronger controls, this legal chess game impacts everyone. What's SCOTUS' next move? Who knows? But boring isn't on the menu. Stay curious.